Pros always rotate to a target pitch attitude. How do you make it easy? They use the flight director. To set up the flight director for takeoff, just simply press the go around button. So pro tip number 1 is set your flight director for a wings level climb. The go around button is actually known on many jets as TOGA, takeoff and go around. Pressing the button will give you takeoff or GA, go around, specific to your aircraft installation. So let's show you how to set up TOGA. So we simply push the TOGA switch. We get on the flight mode enunciators, TOTO, some aircraft installations it might say GA, GA, and we get a target pitch attitude for takeoff. We don't have a go around button, no problem. We'll simply push the flight director button and use the up button to set our target pitch attitude for takeoff. And note, this is the same as if we had pushed the go around button. We simply get a wings level climb for takeoff. So I have an advisory for you, and that is that TOGA will not maintain heading or follow the runway track. You can see here as we get airborne and we rotate to our target pitch attitude, we accidentally bank the aircraft to the left. You can see that the aircraft is no longer following the assigned heading.
That's right, Mossy. TOGA won't fix our heading or bring us back on track. It's simply wings level, that's all.
That's why we use TOGA as a roll mode only for the first 400 feet, then we switch to heading or nav mode as desired. Pro tip number 2 is set the heading bug to the initial heading, and that's either going to be runway heading plus a wind correction or an assigned heading from ATC.
Just remember, unless otherwise instructed, we're not going to turn until 400 feet AGL, and that is where we'll switch the flight director to heading or nav mode as appropriate.
So let's show you what can happen if you actually program the flight director in heading mode on the ground. This exact scenario bit one of my students at Santa Barbara, so let's set it up and show you what happened. Here's the airplane parked in front of the Atlantic Aviation FBO facing southeastbound. We call clearance delivery and we get a clearance, runway 7, on departure, turn right heading 120.
Now, one thing I want you to notice here is that heading 120 is to the left of the nose of the aircraft. That's going to become important here in a moment.
So then we call ground control, and ground gives us a clearance to taxi out to runway 07, and upon reaching runway 07, we line up and wait.
In this position, heading 120 is to the right of the nose of the aircraft.
So I have a caution for you, and that is, do not engage heading mode on the ground. The flight director could turn you in the wrong direction. So let's go to the G1000 and show you this exact scenario. First off, I want you to note that the heading bug is set to 120. The pilot comes on in, they push the TOGA button, and then they commit the common error of actually going into heading mode on the ground. And they get the flight mode enunciators, heading, takeoff, altitude select armed.
Now you can see because heading 120 is to the left of the aircraft, the flight director is commanding a left turn. What we want to do is watch the flight director command bars as we taxi on out and see how they respond to the changes in heading. So here we are, we're crossing runways 15, and as we make the turn, the flight director bars are still commanding a turn to the left. Here now we've turned on a taxiway mic. The heading's to the right of the aircraft, but the command bars are still telling us to turn left. We'll jump ahead and get to where we're going to turn onto the runway, and what I want you to do is watch the flight director command bars as we make this turn. So we're going to turn all the way around and line up and wait on runway 7 and put ourselves in a position for takeoff.
Now, Peter, do you see a problem here with the aircraft in position and hold?
I sure do. The heading bug is telling us to turn right, but the command bars of the flight director, they're telling us to turn left. Now, you tell me, Mossy, which one would you follow?
You know, Peter, and being completely 100% honest, I actually would get airborne and probably follow the flight director.
Yeah, and if you make that left turn, you're going to be heading towards the hills, and that's not a place you want to be going.
Now look, here I am ready for takeoff on runway 7, and the flight director has me turning to the left directly into the mountains. If you were taking off at night or an IMC, this would not be good. So pro tip number 3 is you can use nav mode if the departure starts at the assigned runway. Here is the notorious Northtown 2 departure at North Las Vegas Airport at Las Vegas, Nevada. And Peter, I believe this SID is now the #1 IFR bust departure in the country.
Yeah, I think it is. For some reason, pilots seem to have a real problem complying with this procedure.
So we get a clearance from North Las Vegas to Sedona via the Northtown 2 departure, Las Vegas, then as filed, maintain 10,000. And let's zoom in and break down the procedure with a departure off runways 12 left and right. It calls for a climbing right-hand turn via heading 250 and the Las Vegas radial 313 outbound. Maintain 5,000 to Rusco, and then a climbing right turn to intercept the Las Vegas radial 320.
Because there's a crossing restriction at Rusco, we're going to set our altitude bug to 5,000 feet.
So let's show you on the G1000 what it looks like to actually load this procedure into the flight plan. I'm going to come on over, hit the proc button, select departure. I'm going to choose the Northtown 2, press enter. I'll choose my runway, which in this case is runway 12 right, and I'm going to load it. I'll review my waypoints, 2605, intercept the heading of 252, Rusco, Las Vegas, and then the flight plan route. Now that I've got the procedure in the flight plan, I'm going to program the flight director. I'll hit the toga button. I'm going to press nav, and I've got the flight mode enunciators. GPS, takeoff, altitude select.
The reason it's okay to use GPS mode here on the ground, unlike heading mode like we showed you in Santa Barbara, is that the waypoints in the flight plan start with runway 12 right. And so that sequence will lead you each step of the way through the entire procedure.
Now let's show you what the takeoff looks like. So here we are rolling down runway 12 right, and we're going to get airborne at a low speed with the autopilot on. That's just for simulator purposes. Now, the active waypoint is 2605. That's the 400-foot turn on a typical IFR procedure. So when the Garmin flight plan advances to the next active waypoint, it'll be this heading of 250, which they're calling 252, which is close enough for government work. Now, watch the flight director guidance. So there's the new waypoint, the intercept heading of 252, and note that we are getting accurate flight director guidance into the turn. So pro tip number 1 is set the flight director for a wings level climb on takeoff.
And pro tip number 2 is set your heading bug to the initial heading.
And pro tip number 3 is you can use nav mode if the departure starts at the assigned runway. And that brings us to our final warning. Don't blindly trust the flight director. So a friend of mine who flies a 74400 told me a great story. The old Hong Kong Kai-Tak departure off runway 31, a co-pilot was flying the leg, and the flight director actually told him to turn to the right. You could see here out the window, there's high terrain to the north. The captain is looking out the window and said, "No you don't," took the plane from the co-pilot and actually turned it to the left. What happened was there was a database error in the flight management system that gave them the erroneous turn. The point being, don't blindly trust the flight director. It can have grave consequences.